Hello, so it's been a while since I've uploaded, and you'll notice that I'm in front of a virtual background today, and that's because I'm at college and I don't really need anyone to see my roommate's half of the room. So, virtual background, yay! um, so it's been a while since I've made a video. That's chiefly just I've been caught up reading most of the books I've read in the past few weeks I've really liked, and I just don't have as much to say about books that I enjoy. Um, so there's that, and also I just haven't really felt like sitting in front of a camera. A part of why I haven't recorded for a while is because shortly after recording my last video, I read a series called Call of Crows, which was very similar to the Viking Warrior Rising books in that they are about Vikings, kind of like immortal, not immortal, but like, people who are hired by the Norse gods to kind of take care of their business on Earth and prevent Ragnarok from happening. So when I read that book, I was like, okay, my next video should be about, how to Viking, because the Call of Crows books were just so much better than the Viking Warrior Rising book was. But I ended up deciding that I didn't want to make that video, but because I kept on like pressuring myself to talk about that before I could talk about anything else, I just never really recorded again. So that's why I haven't been here for a while, at least in part. I've also read most of the Nalini Singh Changeling series, and that's a really good series. There are a couple of books that I wasn't as big a fan of. I'd say my main issue with her series is that, most of the books are really good, but every once in a while, every few books or so, she'll have one book that's less of like a story in and of itself and more set up for what's coming. And those books, they tend to switch points of view too much. The romance between our main characters, it's not as prevalent because the point of the book is setting up for the next book. And those happened to be books like there was Shards of Hope with Aiden and Zyra, and I was really into their romance. I wanted to know more about those characters. But ultimately, that didn't happen because she was so busy writing about other stuff that just to me wasn't as important as getting to know our main characters. We kept on switching points of view. We spent most of the book in other people's perspectives and not in our main characters' perspectives. So I never really got into our main characters. There was also Tangle of Need, which was book 11, came right after A Kiss of Winter, which was or it was A Kiss of Snow, I'm not sure, which is the one with Snow and Hawk, not Hawk and Sienna. And that one I'm not going to read. I'm not going to read the one with Hawk and Sienna, not because I can't read about 19-year-olds or I can't read about big age gaps, but the fact that it's a 19-year-old with somebody who's got to be 30, and it just freaks me out because I'm 19 and I cannot imagine, like, oh my god, no. um, so that's why I'm not reading that one, but Tangle of Need came right after it, and it kept on cutting to scenes with Hawk and Sienna. It's like, I don't care about you guys. You guys had your book. I want to read about Adriaz and Rhea, and we just didn't get that much time with them. I thought that their romance was actually really good. They don't have a mating bond like the other characters in that series, so they had to find another way to make themselves work out. And I thought that was unique. I thought it was really nice. I liked how it all wound up. So yeah, but a couple of the books I really liked. Plays of Memory I thought was really good, despite the fact that it's not exactly the same, like, you have one of the Forgotten instead of a Psy or a Changeling or a Human as one of our romantic leads. So it's a little different from the rest of the books in the series. I also really liked Silver Silence, which was the first book in the series I read, because I'm really bad at reading books in order. Ocean Light was one of my favorites. I thought that one was spectacular. The first book in the series, Slave to Sensation, was also really good, despite the fact that the title was really bad. And Mind to Possess was also a really good one. So those were probably my favorites in the series. most of them were very good. The writing was, god tier, but some of the plots weren't as good. Sometimes, like Heart of Obsidian, I felt like there was a whole bunch of build up to, because the hero is a major character throughout the series, and then when it gets to his book, it's like, because you spend so much time in the backstory of the hero and the heroine that they never really get to figure out who they are as a couple now, which really takes away from the book for me. But it is what it is. So that's kind of what I've been reading lately. But recently I read the Fatal Dreams series by Abbie Rhodes. And I wanted to talk about these not just because they're batshit, which they kind of are, but also because they made me think just about the concept of true love in general. And I whole thing, like I spent the entire afternoon writing a whole thing about kind of my thoughts on the Fatal Dreams series and the Nalini Singh Sai Changeling series, and how they formed together to make me basically think that maybe true love isn't a good thing. But I didn't, when I kind of went back through everything that I typed, it's not very coherent, and I think that's because I was trying to do too much there. The fact is, my thoughts on Nalini Singh's Sai Changeling series don't factor in that much into my inner monologue about the Fatal Dreams series. Not about the Fatal Dream series. My thoughts on Nalini Singh's Sai Changeling series don't factor in that much into my internal monologue on the concept of true love. The only book that does is the Tangle of Need series, because the two characters that wind up together aren't meant to be in the same way that the other characters in the series are. In fact, Riaz, our hero, already found like his mate, the person he's meant to be with, but she's already happily married to someone else. So, when he ends up with Adria, they're not meant to be. They're never going to be meant to be. But that's okay. They're still going to make it work. And I really respected that out of those two characters and out of that book. But it doesn't tie in as much as I thought it would to my thoughts on the Fatal Dreams series. So first, let's talk about the series, because it's wild as shit. So you start off with Race the Darkness, which features our main characters, Isleen and Xander. And one of the first things that stands out to me about this book is the depth of the side characters, right? I mean, Xander's father, maybe not as much, because his whole existence kind of revolves around either his job or his lost love interest. So he's kind of a boring side character. And the whole series, this character, Dr. Stone, he basically just exists to give the characters exposition. He is an exposition machine. The side character Ro, I also wasn't as big a fan of, not because she wasn't necessarily well developed, but just because I found her so boring. Well, not boring. I found her annoying. I found her so annoying. I thought Ro was obnoxious because she was so energetic and so yeah. And it's not the fact that it's an old woman being energetic. Like, I would find her obnoxious if she was young too. It's the fact that she's like, oh yeah, and the nice thing about being old is you don't care what anybody thinks. I'm gonna run around and act like a teenager. And it's like, you're making an older character a teenage character, and anyone characterized as a teenage character usually sucks. Teenage characters suck in adult books. I don't know what the deal is, but they do. They just suck in adult books. But you have this Camille character who has basically had a sexual relationship with our main character for 10 years. He wasn't looking for commitment. She did want commitment. He knew that because he can read people's minds. That's something for later. But he never broke it off or anything. He just figured, well, I'm not trying to deceive her or anything. She's deceiving herself. So it's okay. She's giving me the no strings attached sex I want. And she just kind of thinks that I'm more committed than I am. It's fine. But it's just the fact that, she's characterized in the book as being kind of just unkind. She's kind of like the bitchy character. She's very jealous the whole book. But like, it's made clear, like, she's not always like this. She's like this right now because our hero did her dirty. Like, and honestly, like, if I was in that situation, I might act the same way. She's deluded herself into thinking that she's going to get more out of this relationship than our hero Xander is willing to give her. And I sympathize with her and her brother Kent. He's angry at Xander chiefly because of how he's treated his sister. But even so, he's a trustworthy character when it comes to matters of keeping the main character, the heroine Isleen, safe, or when it comes to running investigations on criminals. He still does his job even though he doesn't like the hero. And that just adds a level of dimension that you normally wouldn't get from side characters like that. The second book, I noticed that as well in Lathan, that the hero of Hunt the Dawn, his friend Gil, he is, loyal to Lathan. He's a pretty good friend, but he hates Ebony, who is the main character of that book, because he thinks that Ebony, because it's so sudden, he thinks that Ebony is using Lathan. Even though that's not really the case, like, you really understand where he's coming from and why he then behaves the way he does when it comes to Ebony. And when it turns out in the end that Ebony is innocent, he doesn't fight that. He's like, okay, I see you're good. He's not going to, they don't beat a dead horse. The side characters do not beat dead horses, and I appreciate that. The only time in which that changes is in the third book, Never Let Me Fall, in which there really aren't any side characters. The only side character is this old minister guy who is just kind of characterized as being a nice guy. That's it. That's his character. So I didn't like that as much. The third book was probably the biggest letdown of the series, just because the things I liked in the first book weren't there, but the things I didn't like in the first book were. So the second book, Hunt the Dawn, was my favorite in the series. And thinking about it, that's because not only did we have those rich side characters I loved, not only did we have that dark, intense plot line, but we also got to spend time with Lathan and Ebony. And we got to see them learning about each other. Ebony learning that Lathan grows all of his food and prepares it himself because he can't stand to have other people touch his food. We really get to learn who these characters are apart and who they might become together. And I appreciated that. I thought that was good. Whereas, in the first book, the characters don't learn that much about each other. Isleen spends a lot of the first book feeling betrayed by Xander because, she thinks that he's her uncle, which he's not, that like her mom is his stepsister. There we go. So like she thought, because at some point she learns that her grandmother is Xander's father's wife, but nobody draws the line like, but you're not related. So she thinks that he's her uncle, so that, her feelings are bad. And then she finds out that he's not her uncle. They're happy for like an afternoon in which they just have sex. Like, that's the only thing that happens between them. And then she finds out that he's been with Camille, and that, she thinks that Camille is his girlfriend and that he didn't tell her when they had sex. And then, there's just all this and then. So they don't spend that much time, together at all. So that made their whole relationship less believable. So also, in the first two books, the heroes have basically crippling abilities. Xander has supersonic hearing. If he's standing in a forest, he can hear every rustle of leaves, every bird call. If he's around people, he hears every conversation going around. He hears the click clack of computer keyboards. and it gives him a headache, but also when he's talking to people, he can hear what they're thinking. And when he's around Isleen, he can control all that. He still has the ability, but he can keep it from being overwhelming. Same thing happens with Lathan and Ebony. Lathan has really good sense of smell. And he can, when he's around people, he can smell their memories, basically. And he can see everything that's happened in their lives. It's, because they relate sense to memories. In the third book, I mean, Thomas can see the shadow of death. It's not really well explained. Basically, he can see someone's whole life after they've died by like touching their face or whatever. And he's colorblind. And when he's around Helena, our heroine, he can see color. Woo! But it's not as intense, like you're colorblind. It happens. You can, great. But like with these other guys, like they can't function around people because of their abilities. And then when the heroine comes in, they can function. So that would probably be part of why I didn't like book 3 as much, was because the stakes just weren't as high. There weren't as many good side characters. But the books were very good at, having intense plots. So let's talk about the love, the true love idea that has been bothering me since I started to read Race the Darkness. So these characters are all like meant to be, and the reason that they're chosen to be like meant to be is because of traumatic backstories. Like each of the female characters have these really traumatic pasts, and it scarred them, and so they've been chosen to have these psychic dreams that will help them, that helps the world, right? Isleen can see the future, so she can prevent murders from happening. Ebony can take things from dead people that helps convict criminals. That's part of why her book was so good. When she gets these things from the crime scene, her paired with Lathan's smell, they can work together to solve these things, whereas with the others, the ability of the hero and the ability of the heroine are separate. And then Helena can basically teach people how to get out of bad situations through their dreams. And because of these abilities, I guess, they get assigned protectors, which are our heroes. And basically, once they meet, it causes physical discomfort to be apart. In the second book, Lathan describes it as being kind of like heartburn. And the heroes' abilities are for the first time manageable, or their senses are normal enough that they can live like with a higher quality of life. They can heal each other by touching each other, and if they're making physical contact, nothing can hurt them. So basically, these people are stuck together. They can't leave each other, because if they leave each other, bad things could happen, because bad people are after our heroes and heroines. And if bad things happen, then they have to touch each other to heal each other. And it just, it made me start to think, like, these people are meant to be. Like, this is the romance of the ages. This is what we're supposed to be aspiring for. This is true love. But is true love really a good thing in that case? I think about the first book, Race the Darkness. Isleen basically has been talking in Xander's head for a few years. And each time she's like, please help me, because she's stuck in this trailer where this lady is trying to kill her. Like, she's being tortured to death, tortured and starved. And every time Xander hears this voice, he's like, okay, time to go drink it off. And Isleen, in her past, has had dreams about, being in love with Xander. And so when Xander finally does find Isleen and like saves her from the torture trailer and all that, he stays with her and wants her life to be happy because he feels guilty for not helping her all those times he heard her voice. And she remembers those dreams she had in which they were together and wants to stay with him because of these dreams she had. And so they're not together because they like each other. They're together because they have to be. And like, yes, they like each other, but like, why? They don't know each other. By the end of the book, they don't know that much more about one another than they knew before, you know? Xander doesn't know what Isleen's life was like before she was abducted. You know, she was abducted in high school. So there's a whole childhood before that that he doesn't know about. Isleen doesn't know what Xander's life was like other than, you know, his father not really being present. They don't know about each other's histories. They don't know about each other, and yet they're stuck together because it's true love. And you know, in the third book, Thomas is aware of these like psychic bonds between, you know, these true love bonds, and he, because Ebony is Thomas's sister, so he knows about them. And when he meets Helena, he's like, oh yeah, we're meant to be, like, this checks out. But the only thing they talk about is how scarred and traumatized they are. Like, the whole first half of the book, they're just out here like, oh, alas, I do not speak, for I have been abused. And like, that's all they talk about. They don't talk about, they don't ever work together as a couple. And at the end, like, they're never a unit. And so at the end, when they're all like, I'm so happy because we're together, it's like, I didn't see y'all growing together into, you know, a unit like that. I saw y'all being sad. That's it. You just see them being sad. Ebony and Lathan are a little bit better, where you see them, you know, learning more about each other. But even so, they do spend more time being sad than anything else. And you don't, you know, you don't get to learn about each other as much. So it's like, is true love a good thing if you're forced to love the other person regardless of all else? I mean, yes, you'd be convinced that you're happy, you'd be convinced that you guys are great together, but are you? Because if you only believe you're happy, are you really happy? If you don't have any agency, if you don't have any autonomy because you're always together and you can't be apart, is that really love, or is it just fate controlling how you think? I mean, would you prefer to be in a functional relationship that maybe isn't perfect, maybe isn't meant to be, maybe you break it off later, but it was your choice and you knew what you were thinking the whole time? Or would you like to be in a relationship that's meant to be, that's, you're madly in love with this person, your entire world revolves around this person? Because that's what happens, right? Isleen and Xander are described as being just like Xander's father with his lost love interest. Like, when they see each other, they just, that's all there is one another. And there's a whole world out there. I know I wouldn't want my world to be tunneled down into just this one person, because there's so much more in the world. So I don't know, it kind of sent me through this whole existential consideration, just because you grow up thinking, you know, oh, true love, it's the ultimate love, like it's great, it makes you happy. But what if it doesn't? What if it only makes you think you're happy? Anyway, that's all for today. Bye. See you next time.